Welcome to this week's Founder Focus segment, where we dive into the inside stories behind some of the most impressive entrepreneurial journeys. Founder Focus takes us on an intimate conversation with innovators and entrepreneurs and the great companies they've built. This is Steve Greenfield from Automotive Ventures, and thanks for joining us. This week, I'm excited to welcome our guest, Jim Flint, who was a successful automotive executive before transitioning his experience into founding a very successful advertising agency. His company, Local Search Group, has won numerous awards and recognition, including being ranked by Inc. magazine as one of the fastest growing ad agencies in the nation. Jim has a real passion for the industry and has written a book on how to be a successful car dealer. So with that, let's welcome Jim to the show. Welcome, Jim.
Thanks for having me.
Great to have you here.
Yeah.
So let's get started. Tell us a little bit about why you started the company. What was the spark that ignited the idea?
Well, back in the day with Toyota, I very much had the entrepreneurial mindset even then. But one of the things that I learned there was the principle of Kaizen, which is continuous improvement. So I was the guy who was like, well, wait a second, this internet thing, it's going to be really big. And if we did this and we did that and we did the other, we can make these things happen. And it wasn't necessarily about being right or wrong at that time. It was about making sure that the growth that occurred was controlled growth. So I think I was born with this entrepreneurial spirit, but the corporate metal kind of melded me into the person that not only wants to have that outstanding growth, but who wants to understand along the way what it was that we did in order to get to where it is that we are so that we can continue down a prosperous path. So I've had a really unique experience there in both worlds.
So tell us a little bit about your company.
My company's Local Search Group. We do automotive digital marketing, everything from Facebook and Google to Snapchat and even TikTok these days. So we're trying to find and help our clients get to where the people are. More often than not, they're on their smartphones. And so that's where we focus our marketing efforts. We also do over-the-top advertising, YouTube, kind of all the elements there that you can find on your phone.
There's a debate around whether entrepreneurs are born or made. Were you born an entrepreneur, and when did you know that being an entrepreneur was the right path for you?
You know, it's kind of like the question about environment or heredity. It's a little bit of both, but I will say that my parents had a significant influence on me. My mom was very creative, and she said, you can do anything that you can put your mind to. And my dad was very stoic and worked for the Air Force for 25 years. So anything I made a commitment to, it was about sticking to the commitment. So I had a unique element of, hey, you can do anything you can dream up, which is part of the entrepreneurial spirit. But I think what probably separates me from many, not most, not all, is the idea that once you get into it, that you stick with it and stay to the finish.
So was there a moment in your life when you recognized that the entrepreneurial path was right for you?
Yeah, I just think probably in 2008, 2009, when things were happening all around that were way beyond the sphere of influence that I had, right? There were macroeconomic factors that were creating a crush on the automotive industry. And I'd already been in the business at that point for, let's say, 15 years. And I knew I wanted to stay there. I knew that there were going to be opportunities up ahead, but it was kind of like, what do I do at this moment at the bottom? And at that moment in the bottom, what I was able to identify was the opportunities out in front of us. And so I really, at a point where I was working at the dealership at this point as an e-commerce director, and Google was becoming this really big thing. And there was this government program called Cash for Clunkers. And so I called my rep on the pay-per-click side and I said, hey, I want to put this ad because Thursday night, the legislation passed. I've already built this website. It's incredible. It's got miles per gallon. It's got every make. It's got every model. It helps consumers determine eligibility. And I was really down this kind of SEO path. But the next morning I woke up and other automotive advertisers were in the space via pay-per-click. And it was that morning, that Saturday morning, right? The legislation passed Thursday night. Friday morning, my vendor couldn't help me get it done. Saturday morning, I built my first pay-per-click campaign. And I pride our companies. I am very fascinated by speed, right? And it's how fast can you get to market? And that's what I did. I built my own campaigns because it didn't seem right to me that somebody else was able to cut in line for all the hard work I'd done organically. And so I realized that if I wasn't able to move at the speed of business for me or for my partners or for my clients, then I had to redefine that game. So I started studying Google literally 15 minutes every morning to start my day. It's the first thing I did. And so that's when I think I knew I was onto something that I cared about and was passionate about. And if you want to say that's when the entrepreneurial bug bit me, it was because, there was necessity. There was a need not to just sell new cars, but it was used cars, and it was to help consumers with cash for clunkers. So when you can help clients and consumers and you have technology in the mix, I get excited. You can hear it in my voice, I think.
So what was the hardest decision you had to make as an entrepreneur?
I think the hardest decision was when we were becoming very successful, and I knew we were doing the right things, but I'd studied in school about how cash flow starts to impact you when you become successful, right? And so we were adding a lot of clients, we were growing quickly, and then all of a sudden the cash flow situation started to develop. And what I did was I put the financing on my personal credit cards, right? And then I ran the credit cards up to a really high level. And then American Express had a few questions. And then I finally had to go in and sign a personal guarantee, which, when you're doing the right thing and you know what you're doing, it's okay. But I will tell you that it's not for the faint of heart. And it was kind of at that moment, like, are you ready? Because all the things you do to set up an LLC or a corporation, you basically are saying, hey, you believe in this, this is going to work. But if it doesn't work out for some strange reason, you're basically giving your house over to somebody else. Right. And that's for real.
What was the highlight of your entrepreneurial journey?
I believe, for me, it's about the clients and employees. I really enjoy working with the people and watching them and seeing them grow. That's where I get excited. And so competing and winning is important to us as a team, as an organization, and then to our clients in the highly competitive automotive space. So we've had clients that have gained market share 6 years in a row, right? And that's something that gets me excited and makes me feel good about the work that we're doing, because we're benchmarking it and then we're tracking it and then we're doing intelligent things to help them not only sell more cars in volume, right? Because sometimes that can be predicated on the market, but within their competitive sphere, are we helping them get their unfair share? Because that wins whether markets are up or down. So we've been able to, maintain and sustain those healthy long-term growth experiences because of those growth principles I learned back in Toyota days.
Who is your most influential mentor?
I think I have different people for different situations, but I think the most influential people for me have been on, down one of two paths. There's the operational path, which is very important to the success of your organization in terms of proper ratios and proper expectations. All those things certainly matter, but also really down the creativity path, because in an agency environment, those two things are the fusion, the yin to the yang. And to be able to fuel both those fires, you may feel like sometimes it's a little bit of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, but you have to channel those two different characteristics to be able to run a successful organization.
What was the best piece of advice you ever received?
Man, that's a tough one. I kind of stay in those micro moments of that experience and try to extract meaning from those experiences. I've learned a lot from clients. Sometimes you have to listen to what it is they say, and sometimes it's what they don't say that helps you get to where you're trying to go faster. I've been about learning my whole life, come from a family of educators, understand how valuable that is. But one client one time told me, look, Jim, you're smart. We get it. But I don't want you to learn on my business. I want you to earn for my business.
Right.
And so once I made that shift, I was like, thank you for telling me, right? Like I value the feedback you just gave me, because now I can help drive that through my organization and we can change our perspective. They don't really want to be experimented on or piloted with. They want to take that prototype that gives them the edge to help them win the game that they play literally each and every month.
So for the entrepreneurs or wannabe entrepreneurs who are listening in today, what advice can you give them?
I would say start early. and have somebody has to be watching out for kind of the creative, compliant quality control, because manufacturers are very important to adhere to their guidelines. And you can cost dealerships a lot of money if you go in with something that's not compliant. And so if you're not really, really good there, you need somebody who is. And then down the other path, which is critically important, a lot of people think in terms of an income statement, but to be successful long-term, you have to be able to triangulate the cash flows and the balance sheet. And so if you're not good with the finances, you're going to have issues, or you'll have cash burn, or you'll do things that don't help you structure a company properly for sustained growth. Because it isn't about being great in 1 month, right? It's about doing this for 1 year or 5 years or 10 years. And so I think a lot of people go in looking for the unicorn. Yeah. And I'm not. I'm looking for, instead of being the hare, I want to be fast in the daily, but over the long term, I want to be more like the tortoise, because I think eventually that's who wins the race.
So what's the most influential book that you've ever read?
The most influential book, I would say Good to Great by Jim Collins. In fact, when the COVID-19 experience started, one of the first places I went was to that book to help give our team some guidelines and some thoughts. You know, going into a global pandemic that really no one had experienced before, I looked at the things that companies had done that had helped them be sustained great, you know, at the things that they were doing. And one of them was the Stockdale Paradox. And if you haven't read the book, you should read it. It's a great story about Admiral Stockdale, who survived a prisoner of war experience, and his approach to the daily situation. He wasn't hoping to be freed every day. He was dealing with the reality that he was in every day. And as a result, he didn't go to bed every night hoping for a vaccine, if you will, right, in today's language and structure. He went to bed every night knowing where he was and waking up every morning with renewed emphasis on where it was that he was. Meanwhile, everyone else was hoping that today was going to be that special day. Today was going to be that miracle. And sometimes it's knowing the reality of your situation that helps you plow through it. And that book has been tremendously helpful over and over. There's plenty of other lessons in there that any aspiring entrepreneur should read and then commit to practice, really.
So since you're in automotive, I got to ask, if you could own any car in the world, what would it be?
I would own, it's actually on the cover of my book, Car Dog Millionaire, and it's a 1968 Lamborghini Miura.
Oh, nice.
It's a beautiful lines. It's a beautiful car. That would be the one that I would own.
Nice. So that's it for this week's Founder Focus, our dive into the inside stories behind some of the most impressive entrepreneurial journeys. Please feel free to contact me at any time. I look forward to catching up to discuss the industry with you. Thanks for tuning in for this week's Founder Focus, and we'll see you next week.